Good morning, parents. We have been making our way through the Beatitudes. This week we are on Matthew chapter 5, verse 10. It says there, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Out of all the Beatitudes, this one's probably the biggest paradox. Two statements that are seemingly contradictory but happen to be true. When it says, "Happy are those," or "whole are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake." How can this be? How can you be happy? How can you be whole? But as we think about it more, as we meditate, it does make a lot of sense. If you think about having all these other character attributes, imagine somebody who's a peacemaker, pure in heart, merciful, hungering and thirsting for righteousness, meek, mourning over things that ought to be mourned over, poor in spirit. If they have all this godly character, but they are unable to endure persecution, well, then they're not whole. They're incomplete. And so really, as we come to the end of our study of the Beatitudes, this blessedness for those who are able to endure persecution for righteousness' sake, it's a capstone. This makes you whole and complete. And you could say it this way, it will make you wholly and completely happy. You know, if you are all these character attributes and you're also able to rejoice and be exceedingly glad when you are persecuted. One of the first passages that came to mind as I was reading this was out of Acts chapter 5, when the apostles are preaching in the temple, and then they're arrested by the temple guards and brought before the Jerusalem council. It says that they warn them and they beat them and they tell them not to preach in Jesus' name anymore. And so most likely they're beaten with rods. This would take place on their back, or the rods would go across their arms, leaving marks for them to be kind of publicly exposed and shamed. But instead of being shamed for this beating, it says that they rejoiced that they were counted worthy to suffer dishonor for the name. They were happy. Why were they happy? Why were they rejoicing? Well, because first they were being obedient to Jesus when he tells them to rejoice when they're persecuted. Also, they are able to rejoice and be happy because their physical marks, their physical pain was going to subside. It was going to go away. But their faith was going to continue. And so they're able to rejoice. They're able to be happy. They're also able to rejoice because right there, they're being worthy to be counted to suffer for his name, dishonor for his name, meaning right that their faith is proving authentic. Right? We have a real living faith, and it's being demonstrated through our suffering dishonor for God's name, for Christ's name. And what's interesting to me as we think about this passage as well is that, you know, it could have said, right, they're rejoicing that they are counted worthy to receive honor for Christ's name, because in one sense they are to receive honor. Paul talks about to church leaders that you're to give them honor, and no doubt the apostles would receive honor. But in no passage in the New Testament do we read that the apostles are rejoicing because they received honor for Christ's name. Man, other men and other people are honoring me because I'm an apostle. But instead, that when we do see them rejoicing, it's when they are counted worthy to receive dishonor from people's name. And that's because they understand the pattern and the model of Christ, that he suffered and then he was glorified. And now they're being counted worthy to walk his same path, to suffer and then to be glorified. And so we have to keep our eyes on Christ, right, in all of this. And how does this apply to parenting, right? Happy are those, whole are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake. How do we apply this in our parenting? Well, I think in one way, as we see the world around us changing quickly and, you know, more and more kind of threats towards Christianity, I think it's important that we are teaching our kids these lessons. We're teaching them to be godly, to be holy, but that the result of that, what we will receive from that from the world, is actually insults, hardships, and persecution. You see, it's easy to kind of bypass that message or forget to teach it. But I hope that we're beginning to see, like, we want to teach all the Beatitudes to our children. And this one, of course, is important. And it's the capstone and maybe the most important one. Because there can be a real disillusionment with teaching your children how to be good and godly and prayerful, and then never teaching them that, well, they're going to be persecuted for righteousness' sake. And then when it happens for the first time, they're shocked and, oh my goodness, like, I'm not being accepted by the world. But if we're teaching them from a young age, they'll be prepared, they'll be ready. In fact, I think they'll be able to rejoice and be happy and whole and understand that God is with them. And so I hope this helps you this week, and I look forward to continuing to build faith in families. God bless.